Ambassador stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council and listened to them laugh. He had stood in this same spot many times before. He had heard this same laughter many times before, but today felt different. Today, something inside him was starting to crack. The council chamber was enormous. It was built to hold representatives from over 300 species. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Light came from glowing panels that changed color based on who was speaking. Right now, the light was a soft purple. Purple meant they were talking. High Minister of the Dominion looked down at from his elevated platform. There were tall creatures with pale blue skin and 4 arms. They considered themselves the most civilized species in the galaxy. They had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. Humans had been members for only 47 years. The incident at Colony Horizon was unfortunate, said. His voice was smooth and cold. But we must consider the facts. The humans had established their settlement in a region that was clearly marked as territory. Felt his hands tighten into fists. He kept them behind his back where no one could see. Colony Horizon was founded 20 years ago, said. His voice was calm. He had learned to keep it calm. The territorial dispute began only 3 months ago when your people discovered mineral deposits nearby. Waved one of his 4 hands in a dismissive gesture. The timing is not relevant. What matters is that your colonists were in violation of sovereignty. There were 14,000 people on that colony, said. Families, children, your warships gave them no warning, no chance to evacuate. The chamber went quiet for a moment. Some of the other representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up. No one ever spoke up when it came to the humans should have known better, said. Your species is still new to galactic affairs. You come from a death world. Your instincts are violent and primitive. Perhaps this tragedy will teach you to be more careful in the future. Stared at the High Minister. He thought about the messages he had received that morning. Messages from families asking about their loved ones. Messages from children asking when their parents were coming home. Messages that he would never be able to answer. I am requesting that the council investigate this attack, said. I am requesting justice for the 14,000 humans who were killed without cause. Laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Other in the chamber laughed with him. Soon representatives from other species joined in. Not all of them, but enough. Justice, said. The humans want justice. How amusing. Tell me, Ambassador, do you even understand what justice means? Your species has been walking upright for barely 200,000 years. You have been in space for less than 3 centuries. What could you possibly know about justice? Said nothing. He had learned that saying nothing was sometimes the only way to survive these meetings. The representative spoke next. There were small creatures covered in soft gray fur. They were known for being cautious and diplomatic. Perhaps we could form a committee to study the incident. These things take time. Yes, said the delegate, a being made of crystalline structures that caught the light. A committee would be appropriate. We should gather all the facts before making any decisions. Knew what this meant. A committee meant delay. Delay meant nothing would ever happen. In 47 years of council membership, humans had learned how this worked. Committees were where problems went to die. The facts are clear, said. 14,000 people are dead. The attacked without provocation. What more needs to be studied? Leaned forward on his platform. Be careful, human. Your species exists in this galaxy because we allow it. Your little death world is tolerated because you occasionally prove useful. Do not forget your place. The chamber fell silent again. This was a threat. Everyone knew it was a threat. And everyone knew that the council would do nothing about it. Looked around the room. He saw hundreds of faces from dozens of species. Some looked away when his eyes met theirs. Others stared back with expressions he could not read. A few looked almost sympathetic, but sympathy meant nothing without action. I understand my place, said quietly. Good, said. Then we are finished here. The council will form a committee to review the incident. In the meantime, I suggest the humans relocate any other colonies that might be in disputed territory. We would hate for there to be another misunderstanding. More laughter, always more laughter. Turned and walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed on the polished floor. He kept his back straight and his head high. He did not look back. His aide, a young woman named, was waiting outside. She fell into step beside him as he walked down the long corridor. How did it go? She asked, but she already knew the answer. She could see it in his face. They formed a committee, said. Closed her eyes for a moment. So nothing will change. Nothing ever changes. They walked in silence for a while. The corridor was lined with windows that looked out into space. Stars sparkled against the endless black. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were the other human colonies. Somewhere out there was the empty place where Colony Horizon used to be. I have served on this council for 15 years, said. I have smiled when they insulted us. I have stayed calm when they threatened us. I have apologized for things that were not our fault. I have done everything they asked. I know, said. And for what? Stopped walking. He stared out the window at the stars. 14,000 people, gone, and they laughed. They actually laughed. Did not know what to say. There was nothing to say. Reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communication device. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he pressed a button and spoke a single word. Enough. The message would travel across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. It would reach Earth in minutes. It would reach every human colony, every human ship, every human outpost. One word. One simple word that would change everything. Looked at him with wide eyes. Sir, what did you just do? Put the device back in his pocket. When he turned to face her, there was something different in his expression. The careful diplomat was gone. In his place was something older, something that came from a world where survival was never guaranteed, something that had learned to be patient, something that had finally run out of patience. I did what should have been done years ago, he said. I told them we are done pretending. Far away across the vast emptiness of space, the message arrived, and humanity began to move. Commander read the message 3 times. The single word glowed on her screen in the darkness of her quarters. She had known this day might come. Every human in the military had known. They had trained for it. They had prepared for it. But part of her had always hoped it would never happen. She stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Her ship, the Eternal Dawn, was one of the largest vessels in the human fleet. It carried a crew of 2,000 and enough firepower to level a small moon. For years, it had served as a peacekeeping vessel, helping to protect trade routes and assist with disaster relief. Those days were over now. Pressed a button on her communicator. All senior officers to the bridge, code black. Within minutes, her officers were assembled. They stood at attention, their faces serious. They had all received the same message. They all knew what it meant. You have your orders, said. Begin the withdrawal. All human vessels are to return to designated coordinates. No exceptions. Lieutenant, her second in command, stepped forward. Commander, what about our current missions? We have 3 ships providing humanitarian aid to the colonies. Recall them, said. Recall everything. Every ship, every shuttle, every supply transport. We are going dark. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Going dark was something they had only done in simulations. It meant complete withdrawal from galactic affairs. No trade, no communication, no presence. The will not understand, said quietly. They are depending on us. Closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the colonies. She thought about the crystalline beings who had always been kind to humans, even when others were not. It hurt to leave them without explanation, but orders were orders. They will understand soon enough, she said. Everyone will. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on every human vessel. Ships that had been docked at alien stations departed without warning. Transport vessels abandoned their cargo and turned toward home. Military patrols left their assigned sectors and vanished into deep space. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, a merchant named watched in confusion as the human cargo ships lifted off one by one. "Wait," he called out, running toward the landing pads. "We had a contract, you cannot just leave." But the ships did not stop. They rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. Stood alone on the empty landing pad. His warehouse was full of goods waiting to be shipped to human colonies. Medical supplies, food, technology. Now there was no one to deliver them to. He pulled out his communicator and tried to contact the Human Trade Office. The signal bounced back. No connection. He tried again. Same result. He tried every human contact he had accumulated over 20 years of business. None of them answered. "What is happening?" he whispered to himself. Similar scenes occurred everywhere humans had established a presence. On space stations, human workers packed their belongings and boarded shuttles heading for home. In diplomatic offices, human staff closed their doors and refused to answer questions. At military bases, human soldiers disappeared overnight, leaving behind nothing but empty buildings. The Galactic Council noticed within hours. High Minister received reports from across his territory. Human patrols that had been guarding trade routes were gone. Human medical teams that had been treating plague victims on 3 different worlds had withdrawn. Human engineers who had been helping to build a new space station had abandoned the project. "Find out what is happening," ordered his aides. "Contact the human ambassador immediately." But when his aides tried to reach Ambassador, they found only silence. The human embassy was closed. The human communication channels were offline. It was as if the entire species had simply vanished. "This is ridiculous," said. "They cannot just disappear. They are a member species of the Galactic Council. They have obligations." One of his aides, a nervous young named, stepped forward. "High Minister, I have compiled some information that may be relevant." Speaker brought up a display showing trade data from across the galaxy. It appears that humans have integrated themselves deeply into galactic commerce over the past 4 decades. They provide medical supplies to over 60 species. Their engineers maintain critical infrastructure on hundreds of worlds. Their security forces protect major trade routes. Waved a hand dismissively. "So, other species can provide these services." "With respect, High Minister, other species cannot. Human medicine is specifically designed for their unique biochemistry, but they have also developed treatments that work for many other species. No one else has replicated their work. Their engineering techniques are similarly unique, and their military presence has kept pirate activity at historical lows." Felt a small chill run down his spine. He pushed the feeling aside. "This is just a tantrum. They are upset about the colony incident. They will come back once they realize how much they need us." But as the days passed, the humans did not come back. On the planet, a hospital ran out of human-made medication. Hundreds of patients who depended on that medication began to suffer. The doctors tried to find alternatives, but nothing worked as well. On the station called Gateway, power systems began to fail. Human engineers had designed those systems. Without them, no one knew how to perform repairs. Sections of the station went dark one by one. Along the Merchant's Run, the most profitable trade route in the sector, pirate attacks increased by 300% in a single week. Without human patrols, there was no one to stop them. The council held an emergency session. "This is an outrage," shouted the delegate from the collective. "Humans cannot simply abandon their responsibilities." "We must demand their return," said another delegate. "They are bound by treaty to provide these services." "And how exactly do you propose we make that demand?" asked the representative. "We cannot even contact them." Sat in his elevated chair and said nothing. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him several minutes to realize what it was. Fear. He had dismissed the humans as primitives. He had mocked them as violent savages from a death world. He had never stopped to consider what it actually meant to come from a death world. He had never thought about what kind of species could survive on a planet where everything was trying to kill them. Now, watching the galaxy begin to crumble without human support, he was starting to understand. The humans had not been weak. They had been patient. They had not been primitive. They had been strategic. For 47 years, they had quietly made themselves essential. They had woven themselves into the fabric of galactic civilization so thoroughly that removing them caused everything to shake. And now they were gone. Commander stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn and watched the coordinates appear on her navigation screen. The entire human fleet was gathering at a secret location, far from any alien eyes. Thousands of ships from across the galaxy, coming together for the first time. "All ships have reported in," Lieutenant announced. "We are ready for the next phase." Nodded slowly. She thought about the alien worlds they had left behind. She thought about the people who would suffer because of their withdrawal. It was not easy. None of this was easy. But her people had suffered too. For 47 years, they had been insulted and threatened and dismissed. They had endured it all because they believed in peace. They had believed that patience and kindness would eventually earn them respect. Colony Horizon had proven them wrong. "Hold position," ordered. "We wait for further instructions." The fleet hung in the darkness of space, silent and still, waiting. The galaxy had no idea what was coming next, but the humans knew, and for the first time in 47 years they were not afraid. 2 weeks had passed since the humans went silent. 2 weeks of chaos, panic, and growing fear. When Ambassador finally returned to the council chamber, every representative was present. Every seat was filled. The gallery was packed with observers from across the galaxy. They wanted to see the humans beg. They expected the humans to apologize for their dramatic exit. They expected them to ask for forgiveness and promise to return to their duties. They expected everything to go back to normal. They were wrong. Walked into the chamber alone. He wore a simple black uniform instead of his usual diplomatic attire. His face was calm. His steps were measured. He showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. And somehow that was more unsettling than anything else. High Minister leaned forward on his platform. "Ambassador, how good of you to finally appear. I trust you are here to explain your species' inexcusable behavior." Stopped in the center of the chamber, he looked up at without speaking. The silence stretched on for several seconds. "Well," demanded, "speak." "I am here to deliver a message from the United Earth government," said. His voice was quiet but clear. It carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "As of today, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted in surprise and outrage. The gallery buzzed with shocked whispers. Slammed his hand against his platform to restore order. "You cannot withdraw," he shouted. "You signed treaties, you have obligations." Tilted his head slightly. The Dominion destroyed a human colony without provocation. 14,000 of our people were killed. This council did nothing. Under Article 7 of the Founding Charter, any member species that suffers an act of aggression without council response has the right to withdraw. We are exercising that right. That article was never meant to be used this way, the delegate protested. It was intended for extreme circumstances. 14,000 dead, said softly. 14,000 families destroyed. 14,000 lives ended because the wanted minerals. What would you call extreme, delegate? The had no answer. Tried to regain control of the situation. This is just posturing. The humans need us. They cannot survive in this galaxy alone. Smiled, it was not a friendly smile. Can we not? He pressed a button on a small device in his hand. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with various points of light marking human influence. In 47 years, humanity has established presence on over 200 worlds. We have built the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy. We have developed engineering techniques that no other species has been able to replicate. We have created a merchant fleet that moves more goods than any other 3 species combined. The display changed to show statistics. Numbers scrolled across the screen showing trade volumes, medical patents, engineering projects, military operations. We did this while being mocked, continued. We did this while being called primitives. We did this while being threatened and insulted at every turn. We did this because we believed that eventually this council would see us as equals. He lowered his head for a moment. When he looked up again, his eyes were hard. We were fools. The chamber was silent now. No one shouted, no one protested, they were all listening. You never saw us as equals, said. To you, we were useful animals, pets that could do tricks. You took our medicine and mocked our biology. You used our engineers and laughed at our primitive technology. You accepted our protection and called us violent savages. He walked slowly around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegate after delegate. And when one of your members murdered 14,000 of our people, you formed a committee. A committee. He laughed softly. It was a cold sound. That was your response to mass murder. That was your idea of justice. The situation was complicated, the representative said weakly. There were territorial disputes. We needed to examine all the facts. There is nothing complicated about destroying a colony full of civilians, said. There is nothing to examine. They committed an act of war, and this council chose to protect them instead of us. He stopped walking and turned to face directly. So we are leaving. We are taking our medicine, our technology, our ships, and our people. We are leaving you to face the galaxy without us. Felt something cold settle in his stomach. You cannot survive alone. The other species will not trade with you. You will be isolated. Perhaps, said, but we have survived worse. Our world tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Ice ages, plagues, predators, disasters. We survived them all. Do you really think trade sanctions will defeat us? He turned to address the entire chamber one final time. We are not threatening you. We are not declaring war. We are simply leaving. What happens next is up to you. But know this. We will not forget what happened at Colony Horizon. We will not forget who our friends were. And we will not forget who laughed when our children died. He began walking toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Wait, someone called out. It was the delegate from the Federation, a species of gentle beings who had always treated humans with respect. Ambassador, please. Not all of us supported not all of us laughed. Stopped but did not turn around. I know, he said quietly, and when the time comes we will remember that too. Then he was gone. The chamber remained silent for a long time after he left. Delegates looked at each other with expressions of confusion and fear. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in. Finally, the representative spoke. What have we done? No one answered. In the weeks that followed, the full impact of human withdrawal became clear. Medical supplies ran out on dozens of worlds. Engineering projects collapsed. Trade routes became dangerous wastelands of pirate activity. Species that had depended on human goods found themselves facing shortages and crises. And through it all, the humans remained silent. They did not respond to messages. They did not accept delegations. They did not negotiate. They had said what they needed to say, and now they were waiting. Tried to maintain order. He told the other species that the crisis would pass. He promised that alternatives would be found. He insisted that the galaxy did not need the humans. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, fewer and fewer people believed him. On a small planet far from the Council's influence, a merchant found a human trader willing to talk. The human was old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He sat in a quiet corner of a rundown bar and sipped a drink while they asked questions. "What happens now?" they asked. "What are the humans planning?" The trader smiled sadly. "We are not planning anything," he said. "We are just waiting." Waiting for what? The trader looked out the window at the stars. For the galaxy to understand what it lost, for the Council to face the consequences of its choices, for justice. And if justice does not come, the trader's eyes grew hard, then we will bring it ourselves. He felt a chill run down his spine. He thought about the death world called Earth. He thought about the species that had evolved on that terrible planet. He thought about what it must take to survive in a place where everything wanted to kill you. And he realized, perhaps for the first time, that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. The humans had been patient for 47 years. They had endured insults and threats and finally murder. Their patience had run out. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when stopped being tolerant. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship unbroken and watched the fleet form up around him. 5,000 ships, the largest human armada ever assembled. Every vessel in humanity's arsenal, from massive dreadnoughts to swift destroyers, had gathered in the darkness between stars. They had been waiting for 6 months. 6 months of silence, of preparation, of patience. The galaxy had suffered in their absence. Markets had collapsed. Worlds had struggled. The Council had desperately tried to fill the hole that humanity had left. They had failed. And now, finally, the order had come. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "all ships report ready, awaiting your command." Looked at the tactical display showing it was a beautiful planet. Blue oceans, green continents, cities that sparkled with light. 8 billion lived there. They had never known war on their own soil. For 10,000 years, they had fought their battles on distant worlds while their home remained safe. That was about to change. "Open a channel to the fleet," ordered. "Channel open, sir." Took a deep breath. "This is Admiral. 6 months ago, the Dominion destroyed Colony Horizon. 14,000 of our people died. Men, women, children, families, friends. They were murdered without warning, without mercy, without reason." He paused, letting the words sink in. The Galactic Council did nothing. They formed committees. They made excuses. They laughed. But we did not forget. We never forget. Around him, his bridge crew stood in perfect silence. Their faces were hard. They had all lost someone at Colony Horizon. They all had reasons to be here. "Today we deliver justice. Not revenge. Justice. We will show the galaxy what happens when you harm our people. We will make certain that no one ever makes this mistake again." He straightened his uniform and looked out at the stars. "All ships engage, for Colony Horizon." 5,000 ships activated their engines simultaneously. The light from their drives lit up the darkness like a new sun being born. They moved as one, a perfect formation of death heading toward They detected them 30 minutes later. High Minister was in his private chambers when the alert came. He rushed to his communication center and stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human fleet was massive. It was larger than anything he had ever seen, and it was coming straight for his world. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They cannot attack us. It would be suicide." "High Minister," his military commander said nervously, "our fleet is scrambling to intercept, but we are outnumbered. The humans have been building ships in secret for decades. We had no idea." Felt his world crumbling around him. "Contact them, negotiate, offer them whatever they want." "We have tried, High Minister. They are not responding." The human fleet did not slow down. It did not hesitate. It cut through the defensive positions like a hot knife through butter. Ship after ship fell before the human advance. The weapons, so effective against other species, seemed to barely scratch the human vessels. Because the humans had prepared. For 47 years, they had studied every species in the galaxy. They had learned every weakness, analyzed every strength. They knew exactly how to defeat shields and armor. They had designed their weapons specifically for this moment. Admiral watched the battle unfold from his bridge. His fleet moved with precision and purpose. There was no wild charging, no emotional attacks. This was cold, calculated warfare, the kind that only a species from a death world could wage. Enemy flagship disabled, his tactical officer reported. Their command structure is collapsing. Do not destroy it, ordered. I want them to see what happens next. The human fleet surrounded the. From space, it looked like a ring of fire encircling the blue and green planet. The defenders who remained watched helplessly as their world was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Opened a broadcast on all frequencies. His message would be heard not just on the, but across the entire galaxy. People of the Dominion, this is Admiral of the United Earth Fleet. 6 months ago, your government destroyed one of our colonies. 14,000 innocent people died. Your leaders laughed about it. They called us primitives. They said we would never fight back. He let the words hang in the silence. They were wrong. On 100 different worlds, beings of all species watched the broadcast in stunned silence. They saw the human fleet surrounding the. They saw the broken remains of the once proud military floating in space. They saw what they had become. We could destroy your world, continued. We have the power. We have the right. 14,000 of our people for 8 billion of yours. Some would call that justice. On the, millions of people stared up at the sky in terror. They could see the human ships hanging above them like a death sentence waiting to be pronounced. But we are not we do not murder civilians. We do not destroy worlds without cause. We are humans. We are better than that. Admiral paused. When he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. However, you will pay for what you have done. Here are our terms. The Dominion will immediately surrender all military assets. Your fleet will be dismantled. Your weapons will be destroyed. You will pay reparations to the families of every person killed at Colony Horizon, and High Minister will be handed over to face trial for crimes against humanity. This is non-negotiable. You have 1 hour to comply. If you refuse, we will begin systematically destroying your orbital infrastructure, your stations, your shipyards, your satellites. Everything you have built in space will be gone, and we will stay here, blockading your world until you surrender or your civilization collapses. We are very patient. We can wait as long as necessary. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, the other species watched and waited. No one moved to help no one sent ships to break the blockade. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were alone. High Minister sat in his chambers and stared at nothing. His aides begged him to fight. His generals demanded permission to launch a counterattack, but he knew it was hopeless. The humans had won. They had won before the battle even started. 47 years. He had spent 47 years mocking them, insulting them, threatening them. He had called them primitives and savages. He had dismissed them as violent animals from a death world. He had been right about one thing. They were from a death world, but he had never understood what that meant. He had never realized what kind of species could survive in such a place. He had never imagined what they would do when pushed too far. Now he knew. With 30 minutes left on the deadline, stood up. His hands were shaking. His voice cracked when he spoke. Contact the humans. Tell them we accept their terms, all of them. His aides stared at him in shock. High Minister, you cannot surrender. You will be executed. Laughed bitterly. Perhaps I deserve to be. I destroyed my own people with my arrogance. At least this way some of them will survive. He walked to the window and looked up at the human ships hanging in the sky. They had not moved. They had not fired a single shot at the planet. They were waiting, just as they had said they would. For the first time in his life, truly understood what it meant to face a. It did not mean facing someone violent or primitive. It meant facing someone who had learned patience from a world that killed the impatient. Someone who had learned planning from a world that destroyed the careless. Someone who had learned to wait and prepare and strike at exactly the right moment with exactly the right force. They had thought themselves civilized, but civilization was easy when you lived on a paradise world where nothing tried to kill you. True strength came from surviving hell, and the humans had survived hell for millions of years. Closed his eyes and waited for the humans to come for him. The Dominion fell in 3 days, not in fire and destruction, but in shame and surrender. One by one, their colonies contacted the human fleet and laid down their weapons. Their military commanders handed over their ships. Their governors opened their gates. 10,000 years of dominance ended not with a battle, but with a signature on a document. High Minister was taken into human custody on the 3rd day. He walked out of his palace in chains, surrounded by human soldiers who said nothing as they led him away. Millions of watched as their leader was escorted onto a human transport ship. Many of them wept. Some of them cheered. Admiral watched the transfer from his bridge. He felt no joy. There was no satisfaction in what they had done, only necessity, only justice. The Dominion has officially surrendered, his communications officer reported. All terms have been accepted. Good, said quietly. Begin the withdrawal. Leave occupation forces only at critical points. The rest of the fleet returns home. Sir, we are just leaving. Turned to look at the young officer. We came for justice, not conquest. We are not interested in ruling we only wanted to make sure they could never harm us again. The human fleet began to disperse. Ships that had gathered for war now headed back to their home ports. The ring of fire around the slowly dissolved. Within a week, only a small peacekeeping force remained. The galaxy watched in astonishment. They had expected the humans to burn the worlds. They had expected mass executions, destroyed cities, billions of dead. That was what conquerors did. That was what they themselves had done to their enemies throughout history. But the humans were not conquerors. They were something else entirely. Ambassador returned to the Galactic Council chamber 1 month after the surrender. This time, he did not walk alone. Commander walked beside him, along with Admiral and a dozen other human leaders. They entered the chamber together and took positions in the center of the floor. The other delegates stared at them in silence. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to expect. Looked around the chamber. Many of the faces were familiar. The representative who had always suggested committees, the delegate who had tried to stay neutral, the ambassador who had called out to him when he left. And in the center of the platform, an empty chair where used to sit. We are not here to rejoin the council, said. His voice was calm as it always was. That chapter is over. We are here to establish new terms for humanity's relationship with the galaxy. He pressed a button, and a holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. These are our conditions. First, humanity will maintain an independent status outside council authority. We will not be bound by your treaties or your decisions. Second, any species that harms human civilians will face the same response they received. No warnings, no negotiations, no committees. Third, we will resume trade and cooperation with any species that wishes to work with us as equals. True equals, not pets, not primitives, equals. The delegates murmured among themselves. These were harsh terms. These were the terms of a conquering power. You may think these conditions are unfair, continued. You may think we are being arrogant, perhaps you are right, but consider this. For 47 years we played by your rules. We were patient. We were kind. We endured your insults and your threats because we believed that diplomacy was the path to peace." His voice hardened. "Colony Horizon taught us otherwise. Your rules do not protect the weak. They protect the powerful. Your justice is not justice at all. It is a tool for those who already have power to maintain it. We refuse to play that game any longer." The representative raised a hand. "Ambassador, please. Not all of us supported not all of us wanted this conflict. Surely we can find some middle ground." Looked at the small, furry being with something like sympathy. "Representative, I believe you are sincere. I believe many of you are sincere. But sincerity means nothing without action. When they murdered our people, you said nothing. When the council formed a committee instead of delivering justice, you said nothing. Your silence was as harmful as the weapons." The chamber fell quiet again. "However," said, and his tone softened slightly, "we are not without mercy. We know that some species supported us even when it was dangerous to do so. We know that some of you tried to help, even if your efforts failed. We will not forget that." He gestured toward the ambassador. "The Federation has always treated humans with respect. We will remember. Any species that stood by us in our darkest hour will find us generous allies in the years to come." Admiral stepped forward. "We do not seek war. We never wanted this conflict. All we ever wanted was to live in peace, to trade, to explore, to grow alongside the other species of this galaxy. That offer still stands, but it comes with a warning." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and predators that would destroy any of your species in a single generation. We learned patience from a world that punished the impatient with death. We learned to endure suffering that would break minds born on paradise worlds. And we learned that sometimes, when all other options fail, you must become the monster that others fear." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Do not make us become that monster again." The Council accepted humanity's terms. They had no choice. The defeat of the had shown them what the humans could do when provoked. No one wanted to be next. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Species that had ignored humans now sought their friendship. Trade agreements were renegotiated on human terms. The word, once used as an insult, became a term of respect and fear. Commander returned to her ship and resumed patrolling the trade routes. But now, when her vessel appeared in a system, pirates fled instead of attacking. Her reputation preceded her. Admiral retired to Earth and wrote his memoirs. He titled them Patience and Power. The book became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. High Minister was tried for crimes against humanity. He was found guilty and sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a human prison. It was a comfortable prison. The humans were not cruel, but would never see his again. Ambassador remained in his position, though his role had changed. He no longer begged for scraps of respect from the Council. He sat at the center of a new order, one where humanity was neither master nor servant, but simply equal. 1 year after the surrender, stood in a memorial garden on Earth. It had been built in honor of the 14,000 people who died at Colony Horizon. Their names were carved into white stone walls that surrounded a peaceful lake. Stood beside him, as she always did. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked quietly. "Everything we lost, everything we did." Thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the years of insults, the months of war, the lives lost on both sides. He thought about the new galaxy that was emerging from the ashes of the old. "I do not know if it was worth it," he said finally. "I only know that it was necessary. We tried peace. We tried patience. We tried to earn respect through kindness and service. None of it worked. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to speak in a language that others understand." He looked at the names on the wall. 14,000 names. 14,000 stories that ended too soon. We did not want to become warriors. We wanted to be friends. But the galaxy would not let us be friends, so we became something else, something that could protect our people, something that could demand justice when justice was. Nodded slowly, and now. Smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. Now we rebuild, we heal, we remember, and we make sure that this never happens again, not to us, not to anyone. He turned away from the memorial and walked back toward the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Earth continued to turn, as it had for billions of years. It had taught its children well. Patience, endurance, and the knowledge that even the kindest hearts can become hard when pushed too far. The galaxy had learned that lesson now. They would not forget. And neither would the humans.